And I welcome everyone here to this SAP Community Call. My name is Minina Chao, and I'm part of the SAP Community team. With me is Michelle Crapo, who is a very active community member. She's also an SAP champion. She was a speaker at SAP TechEd and has a lot of experience with SAP community. So that's why I think she's the best person for tonight or for today, wherever you are, to talk about SAP community and how it plays a role in productivity. Michelle, I think I just handed over to you. Oh no, wait, 1 second before we start. Let's have some housekeeping notes first. I don't know if all of you are aware of Zoom or have been in Zoom calls already. In case you want to ask questions, you can type them anytime in the Q&A box or window. There will be a little window that pops up if you find it in your menu, and you can type it there. I will then let Michelle know if she doesn't read or if she's unable to read the questions herself, and we can directly jump into them. I'm sure we will have some time at the end as well to have some discussions or questions getting answered directly. And then, of course, some of you noticed already, we have the chat functionality. If you have comments or anything, but also feel free to raise your hand. There's a hand button, and we will help unmuting you so you can even talk out loud. So happy to have this an interactive call with you guys speaking out loud, and yeah, we all have fun with Michelle. So that's why now I will hand over to you, Michelle.
Okay, well, I got a great introduction, so I'm not going to add anything about myself. I just want to let you know that as we go through these slides, if you have questions or even if you want to add anything, go ahead and do it wherever we are. I don't have any problem stopping and answering. Slides to me get quite boring unless there's some interaction. So I do have slides, and here we go. My agenda here is to give a high level of job productivity. Question and answers, that part of the SAP community is probably the best known, so I'll touch on it briefly. Tutorials, direct messages, blogs, and then how to pull it all together for your job. I'm not even going to begin to scratch the surface of the SAP community. So again, if you have something to add that I didn't quite get, go ahead. Right. So in my job, and maybe some of yours, my job is to get requirements, development, tests, user acceptance, troubleshoot, and training. So mine goes through the whole from start to end. And that makes it more fun and it makes it more challenging. So that's why I'm really glad the community's out there to help. So jumping right into question and answers. Basically, for me, the best way to find my answers is Google search. I find a lot of them in the archives. I do find some of them in the new questions and answers. Then I also go to the support portal, and that helps out a lot. Amazingly, the search capabilities are much better there than they are on the community. And last but not least, I'll search for them on the SAP community. That's also where, if I don't find an answer, I ask the question. So I'm going to have a lot of links here because they're going to go directly to what you want to hear about. So the SAP community is simply here if you haven't been there, which you probably all have because you're on this call. So one of the things with question and answers that unless you've tried to put a question out there, you may not know. And that is that if you start entering your question, then you'll get some suggestions that come down with questions similar to it. And that might be a great way to get your question answered without going through and asking it. So here are some links about submitting a question. It's really straightforward to do. The one thing that I think is really good to know is how to ask a good question, because that will get you an answer quicker. And don't worry if you don't ask the right question. People will go through comments and ask you to clarify. And then don't forget to close the question. It's important that way when people are searching for answers and they search on closed questions, they'll find yours. So, questions. My productivity is increased by troubleshooting, of course. You know, I don't know everything about SAP, I never will. So it's a beautiful place to go and look for my problem. The other thing is I might be on a meeting or be in a meeting with people even in front of me, and I need to find a T code real fast. So that's very nice to be able to do, so that you can type it in and bring them up to the screen you're thinking about. So it helps me not just in my development, but in my requirements, because I can give them something quick to look at. I'm a person who likes to say, and pretend like you know this. And I hold my hands up and everybody looks at me like, yeah, right. So that's where bringing in those screens help a lot. And then it also increases my productivity, because sometimes there's no one that I work with experience in the area, which this brings about a positive for the company, because they have less need to hire more people to cover all of the areas. They also don't need to hire as many consultants, because we are a small company. We work with expanding our consultants as we need for larger projects. So if I know more, it helps them. And there's no or very little wait time for an answer. Again, it depends on your question. So one of the things that I have been asked to do on and off in my career is to quantify, which is really hard to do if you're in probably anywheres. So one of the things I can do in general, and it's kind of like hitting a bullseye, is I can estimate my time that I would take with only SAP help. So just with help, how quickly would I get something done, or would I ever get it done? And then I can say, well, this is how the communities help me out, and bullet point, and then give them a general time. And the reason why I would want to do that is not because I'm looking at questions, but because when I get a really good answer, I kind of feel like I have to answer a question. And, you know, you don't have to, but I then will look through and see if there's anything I can answer real quick. If I have the time, I will look at some of them that maybe it will take a little more effort to answer. So I'm quantifying that so that I can go during work time and answer some questions. Of course, it depends on the workload. And then, yeah, you can show your time after a successful search. And sometimes the search takes some time itself. And the T-code fast really has no major measurement. I don't know how I would do that other than to say, you know, this is what I'm showing people in a meeting immediately without having to go through any menu paths. And it helps a lot with Fiori if it does have a T-code with it. Lately for us, because we're on HANA and we go with a consulting firm rather than with an independent, the consulting fee has been around 150-ish. Ish means that it depends on what they're doing. So then after you do that, you can estimate your hourly amount, and it's going to be much lower than the consultant because the consultant isn't really being paid that much. The firm takes probably a very large cut. And then you can show the figures side by side. If I would have had to go to a consultant for my BRF Plus project, this is how much money it would have cost. But doing it with just me, this is how much money it did cost. So you can do that, you know, you can divide out your salary, which isn't a great way to do it. But you also have to add in some of the other stuff like your healthcare and all that. So it's a little bit harder to do, but you know, my boss helps me out by telling me this is really what you're getting paid. So, you know, I don't feel like I'm underpaid. So that's a great way to quantify it. I mean, that's something you can take, you can measure, you can show as a graph, and then I don't usually bring it to the VPs. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But if I have to, I do a nice graph with that. And then for a quick answer, again, I have real trouble quantifying it. Perhaps that just falls within SAP help because I would have, if I didn't have the community, I would have went through that. And if the community isn't robust, which is another thing I tell them, then you're never going to find that answer that you're looking for because there won't be anyone out there. So that's how I justify answering questions. And, you know, it also gives them a good clue of just how much the community is doing for me. Now, the next thing on my agenda is tutorials. So what you may or may not know is you can browse and you can get a tutorial on the SAP community itself, which is really nice. And you've got some nice resources there. My favorite place for tutorials in the community is the developers area, and I just go through them a lot. I don't always necessarily record because if you record them, you can have submissions completed. I do go through them, and it takes me step by step through something that I'm trying to do. It's a beautiful thing. So that rather than going to a course or a training session and then coming back and not using it for 2 months, you can do the tutorials immediately. And that's very cool. Okay, so productivity. Oh yeah, this one is big. It really has been good for me lately. One of the things I've been doing for my project that I'm still working on is I've been setting up connectors so that I can use WebID. IDE, I'm on premise and I have to use these connectors, and yeah, I had no idea what I was doing, but there was a step-by-step tutorial out there, which made it really easy to do. I still had some issues and I'm still working some of the bugs out, but for the most part, it made it easy to do. Your company saves money in training, and this, of course, you can quantify. You know, they may give you a budget of $10 or $5,000. If you still have a training budget and you want to use it, then you can move up, and you don't have to do those ground level courses. You can move up to the harder ones and actually learn even more. And it gives me downloads for trials, so I can show our management how the product would help. This is huge because, you know, as a developer and in information systems, I'm not generating revenue. You know, of course, I've got ROIs on my project itself, but personally, I'm not generating revenues. So it makes it a little bit harder to get the tools that I need. So if I can show the management how it's going to help, how it's going to make it better for our end user, that it will help me get that tool much, much quicker. And then my productivity itself goes up with the new tool. An example. So I brought another example out there. My company's moved to on-premise in the last year. So now I'm learning at a very fast pace. I've had projects that require BRF+, CDS, AMDP, ODP, WebID, full stack, and I can go on. So these are new things that I've had to learn really, really quickly. And so, as you know, deadlines don't move, even if you have to learn something. So I can give my boss instances where I've done a tutorial and I've used that knowledge to get something done. And it's really nice to be able to do that. He appreciates it. And again, that gives me a reason why I'm out there on the net in SAP community, you know, more than what maybe a normal person is. Another way to get information is direct messages. And in that way, you can communicate directly with the expert. Keep in mind, I only do this when I have asked the question already, or I'm having a huge production issue, or I just want to chat with somebody. You know, you may want to get to know someone and build your network more. So the bad part about this is to be able to use that direct messaging, you must first follow and be followed. And I try to, as people follow me, click and follow them. I also have tried to, on the blog that is out about people that have finished some blogs for the first time, I try to follow them just because some of that information they write is totally new to me. And sometimes it's nice to look at it and go, oh, okay, well, I might have done this a little bit differently and leave a comment for them. But most of the time I'm learning something very new. And here's how to send a direct message. Profiles are, again, huge because you go in and you can look at someone's profile and see if maybe they're a person that has a special ability that you want. Like I've just said BRF+, not everybody knows it. In fact, I struggled to find people who knew it. So this really helps if you go that way. So one of the things, this was a while ago because it was when BIBW was separate from everything else. So I still know very little about it. At that time, I knew almost nothing. I did know who was blogging about BI on the community, and that was very nice for me because I had posted a question and I didn't get an answer on it. And I knew that quickly I had a project coming up on a financial aging report. And that just didn't make a lot of sense to me to do an ABAP because you don't need it real time at all. You know, and we were talking about maybe building a temporary table and all that fun stuff so that we could get just a single point of reference. Well, in BI, that's exactly what it does. To my knowledge, again, don't quote me on this one, they take the data over at a certain time, you know, and then they have that snapshot. So I was able to talk directly with that person at that time. I didn't have to follow or be followed, and I got it. So I got the information I need, and it was more than just that answer you could go out and get. They were able, I actually learned through email. I talked to them that way, and we got to know each other a little bit. And it was Tammy is who I was working with. And so like when questions came up is, you know, why do you think this? I could answer it and sound like I knew what I was talking about when I may not have, but at least it pushed it to the right tool. So it saved my company the time of developing it wrong. And the extra stress on our server, which, you know, it wasn't huge because we were talking about making a table, and it gives them a quicker result, perhaps not in the development, but in the actual runtime, because our BI system was on a different server. And blogs is my favorite. I think that's why I've put it towards the end. So just reading a blog, you can get a ton of information. I tried, I'm not doing it as much now, but I usually try and read blogs about even stuff that isn't within my realm. Like I may read something about a new product or a new solution. So that gives me the ability to suggest things. There also are some out there that step by step, you know, there's arguments that they should be an article, but whatever, I get what I need. And then there's some that I know I'm going to need later, so I bookmark them. And I learn a ton by comments. I believe these are mine. And of course, it's not coming up right now. Probably is on the other screen. But I put something out there, and maybe it's not 100% right, or maybe there's a better way of doing it. So I put a blog out there and I get some great comments back. Some are, we love it, yay, Michelle, which are great. I love to hear that. But some are, you know, you could have done this differently, and here's how you could have done it. I also have some with people that are on a higher version, I used to, that would say, well, why don't you do it this way? And I'd be like, oh, I'm on the slower version, I can't. So just writing a blog gets you information. So my productivity, it's perfect. So I can write a blog and I can basically say, this is the reason why I did it, and this is the reason why I can do it on work time. Is I'm learning a new way of doing things, and I can suggest that during the requirement phase. I can easily show my boss, and he can take that wherever he wants, boss's boss, whatever, where and how I learned it. This has helped me to be a resource for how-to questions. It's also helps when my VP asks if it can be done. I've had times, and don't get me wrong, there are some consultants that are simply amazing. But I've had times where the consultants have said that can't be done. And so the next step is the vice president or it's usually the vice president in this company, comes and asks me, really, Michelle, can that not be done? And I'm like, oh, I just read something. Let me show you. And, you know, I can bring it up and I can say, yep, it can be done. And this is how. And so I get this how to answer. So sometimes I even get step by step, and that's so easy to show as a win. You know, people may ask me how to do something, and if I've seen a step-by-step blog, I can just email it to them. That saves me time, and it saves them time. It helps me find out where I can improve, what I can do better, and how to make all that information pull together and work for you. And then the last thing a blog can do, sometimes it can start a movement, even unintentionally. I wrote a blog a couple of years ago about how bad the community has gotten, and it got a ton of response. I'm not really sure why. A lot of people agreed with me, and the community has improved. From that time to now, it's amazing what the difference is. When I went back to the community after being gone for a while, it was so negative, and I had a hard time with that. Because when it's that negative, it makes you afraid to even blog, right? So now I think it's much more positive. There are so many things going on the community. I mean, you've got so many different places you can go, and it's just beautiful. Like I said, I'm learning every day something different that I can use out there. And sometimes it's via the blog itself, and sometimes it's via Google. So pulling it all together, this is my daily job. And of course, I don't do all of this in one day. Sometimes I do. So it helps me with how-to, it helps me with troubleshooting, quicker response time, and much cleaner code. There is a project out there in GitHub for cleaner code. It's very nice. I read about it on the community. It helps me with requirements because it makes me more comfortable with the suggestions I give, because I know that somebody's done it, or I've seen a product that's been out there that, you know, they may not have considered. So I also, it helps me with the requirements. If somebody wants something special, and I'm not real sure how to do it, you know, I can say, I'll answer that question, you know, in a week, and I can go and do some more research. Again, if there aren't sites like this out there, and the only way they stay out there is people keep adding information to them, then the research would be very difficult. It helps with my training budget, tutorials, blogs, and questions and answer. And finally, it's a place to network. I can find that expert or mentor that can help me out. I can just meet people because, you know, I can speak at Tech Ed, I can talk now, but if I go up to meet somebody, I'm kind of shy, I'm introverted, which isn't a bad thing. It's just the way I am. So it makes it easier for me to network with people. So because I'm not one of those forward people that go right out there and meet people, it's more fun this way. Now, I went really fast because nobody had questions. Are there any questions for me first?
I don't see questions in the window, but maybe people want to speak up or ask a question live.
All right, then I have a question for you. What did I miss that you used the community for? Any ideas? Oh boy. I know I missed some things, so feel free to add them. I'm going to blog about this later and write them in the comments, that type of thing. If you need any help, I'm always available. I'll get back to you if I'm too busy and just send you an email and say, oh, I can't get to this right now, but I'll get to it in 2 weeks, and then you know if it's good for you or not. You have the email at the start of this PowerPoint. It's also on my profile. I will be blogging about this, so you'll be able to look at that for information, and hopefully I'll have comments about what things that you might need. And I have a question. Yay! Do you think using tags is the right way to organize information in the community? No. Bluntly, no. I think I think that made it a lot harder for me to get around. So if they had different areas, it was easier for me to find the things I wanted. Tags for me made it more difficult.
And there are some comments in the chat saying that you mostly covered everything. I agree. And also some feedback that it was really a nice presentation. I agree to this too. And also ways on how to use the community, like Babel shared. I'm using community to document what I've worked on. And others agreeing that using tags they don't like so much. Or Douglas now saying, I've always used the community to search for answers to my project problems, but never used it to assess things before starting a project. So loved your idea. Great comments here. And I would say, since you are always available and active and responsive in the community, I would say let's continue this conversations, and also since you will write a blog post there, move there and end this call. How do you agree with this?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, and thank you so much.
I'm so glad.
Thank you so much. This will be, of course, recorded and uploaded to the community call page, as well as your presentation, right?
Right.
Yes, good. Okay, then have a nice day, everyone, and talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.